Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Rslash Petty Revenge. In today's episode, neighbor took my parking spot after I shoveled. I poured water in his windshield. Screw me out of my deposit and then ask me for a favor? I set my classmate up to fail. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Neighbor took my parking spot after I shoveled. I poured water in his windshield. It was a cold winter day. 8 inches of snow had fallen the night before, and the wind chill made it feel as if it were in the negatives, Fahrenheit. I drive an all-wheel drive SUV, so I have no issues getting out. My wife, on the other hand, drives a Prius, which slides with the smallest amount of moisture on the road. My car was down at the time, so we had to take my wife's car. I spent 45 minutes in the freezing cold shoveling that car out so we could get to the store. We were gone for an hour, and when we came back, our neighbor had taken the spot I had shoveled. Our apartment complex doesn't have assigned parking, but in the winter, it's understood that if you shovel a spot, it's yours. So when I saw his car in the spot I had just shoveled, I was pretty pissed. I went inside and filled 2-gallon jugs of water. Went back out and poured them on his windshield. Rinse and repeat. I must have poured about 10 gallons of water on his car. Being how cold it was already freezing by the time I poured the last gallon on. It sat like that overnight. The next morning, I got to watch as he helplessly tried to scrape all of these layers of ice off his windshield. Don't take my parking spot. My old post on this and a petty revenge. Monday night we got about a foot of snow. Bit unusual for this area, so most people didn't go into work Tuesday. This means street parking is nearly full with unmoved cars covered in snow. Yesterday afternoon I head out to pick up a few things. Shoveling out my car from the street parking spot probably took about 15 minutes. Takes a little while to move the 3,000 or so pounds of snow off and from around my car and dig a path through the snowplow's mess. The whole time I have been shoveling snow from around my car, there has been a lady waiting to take my parking spot. While there are maybe 2 or 3 empty spots on the street, all are filled with snow. So I do what I must. I put the snow shovel in my trunk and head back inside. A few years ago, we got a foot or 2 of snow in Philadelphia. I lived in the not-so-good section of West Philadelphia. People would put cones and trash cans on spots they shoveled out. One idiot had the balls to move the cones and trash cans and park in the spot. Guess who didn't have tires when they came back? I lived in the not-so-good section of West Philadelphia. By chance, is the playground where you would spend most of your days? This is amazing. It's common knowledge, if your complex doesn't handle snow removal, don't be *CK and shovel your own spot. My old apartment before I bought a house, a couple of the kids would actually knock on doors and collect $2 to $3 per person, and would shovel a spot for every apartment that paid. LOL. That sounds like a steal to me. My dad was petty AF. The winter of 96 foot in the Philly area. He had shoveled a spot out from the few feet of snow we got. I can't remember why his car was gone for a minute, but when he got back someone had parked in his spot. My dad was mad. So he shovels himself a new spot, and piles all the snow up on and around the car in his original spot. He then shovels the neighbors some spots, and did the same thing. Couldn't even see the car when he was done. This was a great story that just got better. Dad went out of his way to dump on this spot stealer, and just happened to help his neighbors in the process. LOL. Screw me out of my deposit and then ask me for a favor? Many years ago I rented an apartment for 2 years and never had any issues, always paid rent on time. At the time I used an online bank that didn't issue checkbooks, so I would enter a check amount and the recipient online, and the bank would print it up and mail it out. This is how I paid my rent, and these checks expired 90 days after the date they were written for. Anyways, after I moved out, I had to pester my landlord for about 2 months to get my security deposit back, which was the same as 1 month's rent. I called and texted him dozens of times and never got a response. So one day on the first of the month, I staked out my old building, because I knew he always came to collect the rent checks that people would slip into the mail slot. When he showed up, I confronted him, and he told me he hadn't gotten back to me because he was in the hospital with a heart attack, and that he would not be giving my deposit back because the cupboards were dirty. They weren't. I wiped down every surface, and there was some mold above the shower, which was true, but it was minimal and the paint and drywall were not damaged. He told me I should have told him about the mold, and he would have handled it before it got that bad. I probably could have challenged it somehow, but I was young, it was my first time renting, and I was unfamiliar with renters' rights. Fast forward another month or two, and he calls me up and tells me one of my rent checks bounced. I told him that's impossible because the money is placed on a hold as soon as the check is printed. Then he changes his story and says his secretary lost the check behind the desk, and they found it more than 90 days later. I told him he should have told me he lost the check, and I would have canceled it and sent a new one, but since he held on to my security deposit for no legitimate reason, I was not feeling inclined to help him. I hung up and never heard from him again. Karma handed you the trophy. Perfect. He used a lame excuse to cheat you out of your deposit, so he paid the price after misplacing the check. Well, how the turntables. In some states, landlord abuses are paid out at 2-3x what they took to protect the tenant and make the offenses less easy to carry out. Most landlord-tenant laws are weighted in favor of the landlord, but sometimes it's nice to see the little guy win. This is the way. In the UK, the tenant has nearly all of the rights. Your security deposit got used for its intended purpose. Seems perfect to me. I set my classmate up to fail. A couple of years ago, I was studying at university. I've always done well in school, and am the kind of person who tends to end up running the group during group assignments. In one of my classes, I ended up in a group along with 7 others, so in total there were 4 women and 4 men. Every week we'd have an assignment that we got to spend Monday through Thursday preparing for, and then on Friday we'd meet up for a seminar with the other groups as well as the teachers to present our work. Out of the 8 members, 7 of us took it seriously. One of the men was always, and I do mean always, late. Not 10 to 15 minutes, more like 45 to 90 minutes. At first, bad teammate blamed it on getting lost trying to find us, which didn't make sense because the setup was that the teachers booked rooms for each group to prepare in, and we always had the same room. Everyone knew where it was, right next to our main lecture hall, which this guy didn't have any issue locating because he showed up for lectures. Then he said he'd misread the schedule and thought we started an hour later, but, just like with the room, it was the same time every day. When bad teammate finally did show up, it became clear he hadn't read the literature or taken any notes, and the rest of us had to spend half our time explaining the very basics to him instead of doing the actual assignment and then stress/work late in order to finish. Normally, I don't mind helping people with school. I know sometimes people struggle, whether it's due to learning disabilities, health issues, family problems. I've been in that position myself. What I do hate is people who try to weasel their way out of doing anything simply because they don't feel like it, but then still expect full credit. Still, we as a group tried to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. We checked in with him, offered to explain the assignments, reminded him which chapters we needed to read and so on. It didn't help. Every Friday seminar, the teachers had a list with all of our names. Everyone had to make at least one comment/answer one question in order to get a passing grade. Higher grades of course required more participation, but that was the minimum. So when one of us spoke, the teachers crossed us off the list. When there was 15 minutes left, the teachers would call out the names of those who hadn't participated and remind them that if they didn't speak they'd receive a failing grade and have to do an individual written assignment to make up for it. Every week bad teammate got called out, and every week he kept quiet. After about a month of this, I started to think that maybe this guy had a severe phobia of public speaking, and that he was intentionally failing so that he'd get to do written assignments instead. It was sad, but I didn't know what else to do since none of our previous attempts at supporting him had worked. Our last seminar that semester was a bit different from the others. We were still allowed to prepare in groups if we wanted to, but at the seminar everyone was expected to present individually. Our group agreed to do most of the prep on our own, and then just meet up for a quick check-in before the seminar. During this meeting, it became clear that we had misinterpreted some of the questions, and we hurried to fix it. Again, bad teammate was super late. He showed up as we were still correcting our answers, but he must have thought we were all done because he said, "Sorry, I'm late." I guess I missed the prep, so if one of you could just take pictures of your notes and send it to me, that'd be great. We all went quiet for a moment. Then we told him that no, we actually weren't quite done yet, so it'd be great if he could sit down and help correct the last couple of questions. Bad teammate looked nervous at that, then said sure, he just had to run to the bathroom first. He disappeared for another 20 minutes, and when he came back he tried the same thing again. "You're probably done with the prep now, so just send me the notes." Before we could say anything, the teachers called us inside. Bad teammate didn't get our notes and, predictably, he didn't say a word during this seminar either. Fast forward a couple of days later and bad teammate starts texting me, asking for my notes from all of the seminars because he totally took notes each time. He just forgot to save the document on his computer, and now he has to hand in 7+ written assignments to make up for the seminars. I was visiting family at the time, so I told him, truthfully, that I didn't have access to my notes because they're all by hand and I didn't bring my notebooks. He kept insisting that I give him my notes. I later found out he'd been pestering the other girls in the group too for their notes, but not the boys. At this point, I was very tired and irritated. So I decided to send him some notes. Just not the ones he wanted. Remember the last seminar, where we realized we'd misunderstood some of the questions and gotten the answers completely wrong, so we had to correct them right before walking into the classroom? I compiled our incorrect answers, threw in some other unrelated stuff for good measure, and sent it to him. He sincerely thought I just handed him the perfect cheat sheet that he could just copy. I don't think he passed. You did not set your classmate up to fail. He did that all on his own. My son's in a 6-person team, 2 of them are useless, and after it was graded the prof said really well done for a 4-man team he somehow knew. It's pretty obvious even as a student who knows what they are talking about and who sat back and watched. We have all prayed for that professor. Some cats are not built for group work. As long as you and your competent group mates' grades weren't affected, no love is lost for this cat. The worst part is, you even made an effort to accommodate possible hang-ups like speaking in public. Hopefully he has parents or connections that will help him through life. If not, Florida is best for homelessness. I would keep him close to use those connections to get yourself ahead, since you know his work ethic is subpar. I'd argue that California is better for being homeless than Florida. No hurricanes there. He did not belong in such a university. Man, this was good revenge, lol. When I was doing a group project, it was my best friend who ended up like the guy above. A complete stranger, me and a good friend had to cover up for him, but in the end he got all the credits, even when we complained to the coordinator about him. But in the end karma got him. He got into a domain, legal, that is completely unrelated to his electronics and communication engineering degree. After being forced to resign for misconduct with a client, he came into tech as a beginner. Also, he ended up failing one of the subjects in the last semester where almost everyone passed except him. Don't feel guilty for what happened to that lazy B** starred in your story. Sooner or later karma would have gotten him. You just helped him reach there faster. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.